have you. Good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Pearson. It just speaks to the fragility of life. And as you reflect on Jackie Marshall Clark, it brought to mind another Marshall, Trevor Marshall.
Yes.
Who passed last Wednesday. I had visited him at QEH just the week before. And I was asking him, Trevor, when are you going to be leaving the hospital? And I had actually gone back on Wednesday to see him, and only to discover he had passed maybe about half an hour before I got there,
Wow.
you know? So the fragility of life, but as you said, we have to remember all of the great things that these dearly departed gave to us and gave to our society.
Outstanding contributors to Barbados, you know, both Marshalls, Jackie and Trevor. And their story has to be told. I hope that we never, ever forget these people. We never. Time tends to erode our memories, but I hope we never, ever forget.
Well, the best way to remember is to, by our own efforts and work, to carry on the legacy, you know, and to help take it a step further.
See, I've now been commissioned to carry on the legacy, to take it a step further.
I have to carry on Trevor Marshall's legacy,
yes,
you know, all the work he did in the field of history and activism, And I mean, we are going to be talking about Prime Minister Mottley's speech on the continent of Africa. Trevor was a pioneer in helping us to understand our African connections and our African roots.
All right, let's get down to business, or some say to brass tacks. Now, we have the meeting of the CARICOM heads this week coming up, and just before that, yes, tomorrow actually, as a matter of fact, the Ministers of Foreign Affairs are also going to be meeting. You've had some insight. Are we ready? How is it looking? How are we preparing?
Well, I'm wearing
my accreditation.
my accreditation badge, which I picked up last night at the Lloyd Erskine Sandiford Center. LESC was a hive of activity last night, getting ready for the opening ceremony tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. and the dancers were going through their paces, the drummers and the brass players and the spoken word artists were there. So Barbados is going to be on display. The arts and culture of Barbados is going to be on display for that regional but international audience. I mean, as we said, from the Secretary General of the United Nations back down. And of course, tomorrow morning, even before the opening ceremony, we'll have the meeting of our foreign ministers, and that's in the morning. In the afternoon, the heads of government and other officials will have a session with Silicon Valley. They will be exploring the idea of establishing a Caribbean community, Silicon Valley. So we are looking at how can we get into the whole world of high tech. And then on the Thursday and Friday, we have the business sessions at the Wyndham. And an important thing, Pearson, because we spoke about the agenda last week, but we did not speak about Martinique signing on at this CARICOM Heads of Government Conference as our 7th associate member of CARICOM. And that's historic. You know, Martinique will be our first French-speaking associate member. So it's going to be a great 3 days, and we trust that this Heads of Government Summit will accomplish some very important progress for CARICOM.
Indeed, and so you will all see the opening ceremony here on CBC TV8, of course. We'll be updating you or reminding you of the time and the start thereof, but the CBC will be showing to you the opening ceremony. I think we should all sit around and watch, because as Ambassador said, it's a true expression of our best at culture and our expressions generally, and so we want you to witness that. Now, the Prime Minister, oh, what a busy moment she's having. We know the estimates all, she's here for that. She's been attending other official bits. But she was in Addis Ababa last week, I think it was, where she delivered what some have termed to be the I Have a Dream speech for CARICOM and the African continent. And I think to be able to label in such a way is a tremendous fillip for Barbados.
Yes, as you said, I don't know how she does it. I don't know how you, on Saturday morning, you're halfway around the world in Addis Ababa, making that brilliant speech. By Monday, you're back in Barbados, you're in Parliament, you're dealing with estimates, and then you're going to be chairing the CARICOM meeting starting tomorrow. So she's special. But yes, to have her address an African Union Heads of Government Summit in the headquarters of the AU, all 55 member states representing 1.4 billion people. And this year, the theme of the African Union is justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. And that theme ran right through her speech, because her speech was about our unity, the continent, the African descended people like us of the diaspora, the need for us to come together, and the need for us to come together to do two things. One aspect of the reparations is our outward demand for changes, for reform, for revamping of unjust and unequal or international order, for compensation for what is due to us. But then secondly, an inward look at self-repair of the things that we need to do for ourselves together. And I want us to look at 3 short segments of her speech. And you will see that running through all of those segments is that idea of unity, outward demands for justice and for transformation, but also inward demands, inward efforts of working together.
All right, let's take a look at the first clip and then we'll talk right after.
Yes, I stand here as a daughter of Africa. I stand here equally as a proud Prime Minister of Barbados, a country which is the first landmass that you reach after you leave this great continent of Africa. A country which became a hub for the wrong reasons, but today I come to Ethiopia to share with you in the Africa Union that we can be a hub now for the right reasons between our two peoples. I stand here as the proud chairman of CARICOM, the Caribbean community, recognizing that as a member of the 6th region of Africa, we have come to reclaim our Atlantic destiny. We have come to ensure that the very futures of our people are different and will not once again be determined by a middleman who will ensure that the Middle Passage is one that sees our people at the bottom of the ocean's floor of the Atlantic or in the fields of the plantations of the Caribbean, but instead that it will be a future that sees our people, hears our people, feels our people, and that will determine in future that it is we who shall forge the manner in which we cooperate, integrate, and invest, rather than simply being victims of a past history. I stand here equally as the chair of the V20, 70 countries across the world that are climate vulnerable, 40% of whom come from this great continent of Africa, recognizing that it is only through unity that we can confront the existential crisis of our generation, that of the climate crisis. The Secretary General of the United Nations has already laid out, ably so, many of the iniquities that we continue to face in spite of political independence. It was His Majesty Haile Selassie who popularized and told us that there shall be no first-class or second-class citizens, words popularized by Bob Marley, learnt by all of our people without appropriately recognizing the context in which he spoke and the mission which must be ours for generations until it is achieved. He told us that there would be war if there were first-class and second-class citizens. He told us that there would be war if the color of our skin was more significant than the color of our eyes. And we see here in the continent the continued descent into conflicts born out of ethnicity differences, born out of a mad grab for resources, not invariably for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others who seek to use our people as pawns in the determination of their own future. But we stand here as proud people, and we have enough among ourselves to know the difference between right and wrong, and to forge a future that is not for a few, but for the many.
I watched you, Ambassador. Your eyes were closed, absorbing. What did you take away?
Well, that message is so powerful. You know, she begins by stressing our unity, who we are. We are members of your sixth region, Africa. We have come to unite with you, and we have to work together. We have to change the world. But she also says we have to look within. Those ethnic conflicts that are often caused by outside powers divide and rule. We have to recognize our own humanity, and we must know right from wrong, and we must transcend those kinds of even internal differences, and we must respect the humanity of our own people. So it's a very powerful message, about transforming the world order, but also about us recognizing the preciousness of all African people.
And a rallying call for unity, right through it all, because the color of our skin and the color of our eyes don't divide us, but they can actually bring us together. I want to play for you another extract, and I really want to hear your take from this one as well.
The reparations which we call for the international community to be able to recognize, first and foremost, with that which we ask from each of our children. Say sorry. Say sorry. And mean it. And after you say sorry, recognize that the future of the world is not possible without the stability of Africa and its diaspora. For as long as hypocrisy and double standards remain, it will be impossible to secure stability and peace in any nation across the earth. The reparations that we call for, beyond sorry, must be for fair access and development and compensation, because we each started the journey of independence with a chronic deficit. A deficit of resources, a deficit of fairness, a deficit of opportunity. And it is up to us, many of us in the second and third generation of independence, to be able to frame out fairly in a mature conversation what those reparations must look like if we are to attain justice and to inspire the young people of this world that good must always prevail over evil. But it is not only the reparations that we ask from the international community, because we ourselves must repair the damage that was foisted on us. The notion that transit visas, begging for them, must be the lot of our people in order to move across this world cannot be something that gives us satisfaction. To go east and to go west, we are first forced to go north. It is not right. And it is not beyond the heads of government and heads of state, of the region, of the Caribbean community, and of the continent of Africa, to determine that we must stop talking about, but simply do what is necessary to build the air bridges and sea bridges to guarantee that we control our destiny.
I'm one who, when I watch things, I look at the other players in the screen, and I saw the man who was sitting behind the Prime Minister. He was there nodding away in total agreement. Powerful again, and talking a lot about the exchanges, not just the call for reparations, but for me, I would not forget, say sorry and mean it.
Yes. Yes, so this was the part of the speech where she really, she is the chair of the CARICOM Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on Reparations. She has lead responsibility for reparations. So this was the part of the speech where she really zeroed in on the reparations mission. And good, and she cast it in moral terms. You know, good must always prevail over evil. Yes, that past was a past of evil. Be willing to say sorry and mean it, and then to go on to deal with all of those structures of inequality and inequity that have their roots in that history that still exists today, that we have to change in order for good to prevail over evil, but in also to save the world, because that paradigm that the Europeans put in place during those centuries of enslavement and exploitation is actually taking the world to disaster. It is an unsustainable, exploitative paradigm that is producing climate change, global warming. It's producing great inequality and instability in the world. So she's calling all of us to a new vision, the vision that CARICOM started with when we established the reparations program in 2013, that the 21st century must be the century of reparative justice, where we take these old relationships built on exploitation and inequality and injustice, and we take them to a new level of brotherhood and working together, you know?
It was about a 30-minute speech, roughly, but all throughout it was dotted with some powerful takeaways. I have one more to share with you, if you don't mind. Let's take a look at this one, then we'll talk right after.
When I speak of the USA with affection, I do not only want to speak of that which is known in the Americas. I want to speak about that which ought to have been possible if the 1884 Berlin talks did not take place. The possibility of the United States of Africa, which is as diverse as India, which is as diverse as China in terms of ethnicity and language and religion, but which is entirely possible if we see not ourselves first, but we see the unity of ourselves together. This may be the cry of a naive and romantic daughter of Africa. But if that is the case, I prefer to die being a naive and romantic daughter of Africa than one who is cynical and one who is daunted by the actions and power of others. We know what it is to stand in unity with you to fight apartheid and to fight for the liberation of the peoples of Africa. For when President Castro stood to send people from his own country to southern Africa to free your people, it was in my own country that the planes refueled, ensuring that that battle was possible. And when 100 years ago, almost, a Barbadian man and woman left our nation and left the United States to come here, Arnold and Mignon Ford, he wrote the anthem and lyrics of the anthem of the United Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, and his wife dared to establish a co-educational school here in Ethiopia, ensuring that boys and girls could receive education in a time and at a time when war was dominating the global landscape. They chose to see light rather than darkness. I ask us today, in tangible terms, that will allow our people to travel, that will allow us to pool our investments to ensure that the people of Africa not be denied the electricity that is so necessary as a platform for participation in the new world. I ask us not only to pool that investment, but to also ensure that we pool our voices, because there is too much division in this world today. There is too much war and there is too much conflict.
Again, powerful expression. Your thoughts?
Well, that was the goosebump part of the speech for me, because she was referencing such critical aspects of Barbadian history. You know, the role that Barbados played in 1975 when the newly independent nation of Angola was under threat from racist South Africa. And the Cubans sent their troops and the planes refueled in Barbados. Between October to December 1975, Barbados was the critical refueling point to get those Cuban soldiers to Angola, and they got there just in time, Pearson, just in time to repel the South African-inspired assault on Maputo and to save Angola's independence. And that was the foundation for the liberation of the whole of Southern Africa, including ultimately the freedom of Nelson Mandela, the fall of apartheid. And then she goes on to cite two of my great Barbadian heroes.
Yes.
Rabbi Arnold Josiah Ford and his wife, Mignon Innes Ford. And that was a goosebump moment for me because I have written the only book about these two great heroes. And this is a story that the world needs to hear about these two Barbadians at the center of the Marcus Garvey movement. How many Barbadians know that the African liberation colors, red, black, and green, were the invention of a Bajan, Pearson, of a Bajan, that the Marcus Garvey anthem, Rabbi Arnold Josiah Ford, the Rastafari anthem, Rabbi Arnold Josiah Ford, and then Mignon. Ethiopia would not be what it is today were it not for the pioneering educational efforts of this Bajan woman. So this was a powerful way to end her speech, to make real what we can achieve, when we come together and we work together, that nothing is beyond us. And she keeps stressing, she keeps putting it all in moral terms. It is about good over evil. It's just brilliant. And that speech and her presence in Ethiopia has now laid the foundation for an in-person, face-to-face CARICOM African Union Heads of Government Summit in Addis Ababa on the 7th of September this year. So good things. She has laid the foundation for many good and constructive things to come.
Ambassador Comissiong, boy, again, sat in rapt attention. Sometimes we listen to speeches and we don't quite absorb it, but when we break it down in the way we have this morning, I think we get it. Thank you so much, as always, for having with us that conversation on CARICOM once again. We look forward to seeing you next week, sir.
My pleasure, Pearson.
You're welcome. His Excellency David Comissiong, Barbados Ambassador to CARICOM. We took a look this morning at the upcoming Heads of Government meeting and preparations therefore, and also excerpts from that outstanding speech delivered by our Prime Minister, Amor Mottley, in Addis Ababa just last week.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.